The childless economy. Why the middle class stop having kids? Well, that's a damn good question, and I think I have an answer for it. But we're gonna let this video from the YouTube channel Hotch do some of the explaining, and then I'm gonna give my 2 cents on it. And then y'all can drop y'all 2 cents down in the comments. Make sure you like and sub to the channel. Let's not waste no more time. Let's get to this video, y'all.
Go to a playground in any major city. Tokyo, Seoul, New York, Toronto. At 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, it used to be full. Screaming children, exhausted parents, the soundtrack of a functioning civilization. Today, it is quiet. In the 1950s, the average North American family had 3 or 4 children. A child was considered a natural part of the human life cycle. It was the default setting. You grew up, you got married, you had kids. That was the deal. In 2026, a child is something else entirely. A child is a luxury good. Economically speaking, a baby has become the equivalent of buying a Ferrari.
Yo, that is a good way to put it. And what's crazy is that my grandfather, God rest his soul, he was one of 10 children. He had 7 sisters and there was 4 boys, him included. You don't see that nowadays. You don't.
It costs about 300,000 Canadian dollars to raise one child to age 18 in Canada. In the United States, the Department of Agriculture estimates $310,000 USD. It requires expensive maintenance. It requires space to park it, housing. It requires fuel, food, clothing, activities. And unlike a Ferrari, you cannot sell it if you lose your job. We are witnessing what economists call the financialization of the family. For the first time in history, the middle class has looked at the spreadsheet of parenthood and realized the numbers do not add up. Canada's fertility rate has collapsed to 1.3.
Yo, I ain't gonna hold y'all, man. Like, I low-key thought that I was going to be a father of 3, married and all that. And this was coming from somebody who at the time was 21, going on 22. And that did not come to be. I do have a kid, but I don't got 3 of them. And to be honest with you, I don't know, man. I don't know.
33 children per woman. That is the lowest in Canadian history. That is 37% below the replacement rate of 2.1. That means every generation will be 37% smaller than the one before it. The United States is at 1.62, also a record low, down from 3.7 in 1960. South Korea is at 0.72.
Damn, these
They're
are
on
some
track
really
to have their population by 20.
alarming numbers.
China, the country that until recently had a one-child policy, is now at 1.0. They are begging people to have children. It is not working. France, which we discussed in another context, just recorded more deaths than births for the first time since World War II. These numbers are not just statistics. They are an extinction event happening in slow motion. We are told this is a lifestyle choice. We are told people just want to travel and have careers. We are told millennials and Gen Z are selfish, that they prefer dogs to babies, avocado toast to diapers. That is.
I mean, there's some truth to that. I ain't gonna lie. Like, there's a large demographic of Gen Z and millennials like myself who would rather just enjoy their life. They don't want to be hassled with the idea of having to raise a kid or figure out how they're going to be fed, who's going to watch them, all this type of stuff. So I can see that.
A lie. That is a convenient narrative that blames individuals for systemic failure. Survey after survey shows that most young people want 2 children. The gap between desired fertility and actual fertility has never been wider. They want kids, they just cannot afford them. This is not a choice.
I really think it depends on who you ask. Yeah, is there a large demographic of men and women out there that want to have kids? Yeah, I'm sure. But it depends on who you ask. The location, demographics, income, it's a lot that goes into that. There are some people that I know that's just like, yo, man, fuck them kids. I don't want no kids.
This is coercion by economics. Today, we are going to perform a forensic autopsy on the birth rate collapse. We are going to examine the housing contraceptive, the daycare mortgage, and the dual income trap. We are going to answer the question that nobody in government wants to ask. How did we build an economy so rich in GDP, but so poor that it cannot afford to reproduce itself? This is the story of the childless economy. 1. The asset to liability shift. How children became a financial mistake. To understand why the cradles are empty, you have to think like an economist from the 19th century. For most of human history, a child was an asset. If you lived on a farm, and 90% of humanity did until recently, a child was labor. At age 6, they could feed chickens. At age 10, they could harvest crops. At age 14, they were a full working hand. At age 20, they were your retirement plan. They took care of you when you got old. They inherited the land. They continued the operation. The return on investment for a child was positive. You put food in, you got labor and security out. Children were the original pension system. In the modern urban knowledge economy, a child is a liability. They do not generate income. They consume it. They do not provide labor. They require labor, childcare, supervision, education. They do not reduce your expenses. They multiply them.
Damn. He hit the nail on the head with that one. I never even looked at it from that angle. But he's right. Even if you go back to when my people were in captivity, I mean, my great whoever definitely made sure that they was out there using their hands and being a contributor and being able to take care of their parents and stuff like that. But damn, he's right.
And with the breakdown of the multi-generational household, they are no longer guaranteed to take care of you when you age. The economic logic has flipped completely. We have moved from an agrarian economy, where children make you richer, to a knowledge economy, where children make you poorer. The math is brutal. A child costs $300,000 over 18 years. That is money that could be paying down a mortgage, funding a retirement account, or simply keeping you afloat in an economy where real wages have stagnated for 40 years.
Damn,
In a healthy society, the emotional and biological drive to have children overrides the economic calculation. People have kids because they love them, because they want them, because it gives life meaning, not because children are profitable. But there's a breaking point. There's a price threshold where the liability becomes so crushing that it overwhelms the biological imperative. Canada has crossed that threshold. The United States is crossing it. Europe crossed it decades ago. We have made children unaffordable, and people are responding rationally. There 2. The housing contraceptive. No bedroom, no baby. The number one form of birth control in Canada and the United States is not a pill. It is a real estate listing. There's a direct mathematical correlation between the cost of housing per square foot and the fertility rate. Economists have mapped it. The line is almost perfectly inverse. As housing costs rise, birth rates fall. The mechanism is simple. To have a child, you need a bedroom. In the 1970s, a 3-bedroom house in a Canadian suburb cost approximately 3 times the median household income. A single income could buy it. A factory worker, a teacher, a salesman, any stable job could afford the family home. Today, in Toronto, the average home costs $1.1 million. The median household income is $98,000. That is a ratio of 11.1. In Vancouver, the ratio exceeds 13:1. A generation ago, it was 3:1. Even in affordable Canadian cities, the ratios have exploded. Calgary went from 3.51 to 5.501. Ottawa went from 3:1 to 7:1. Halifax went from 2.51 to 6:1. There's nowhere left to run. In the United States, cities like San Francisco, Los Angeles, and New York have similar ratios. Even affordable cities like Austin and Denver have seen ratios climb from 3:1 to 6.1 or 7.1 in a single decade.
It's getting bad out here, man. I know it's early in the video, but it's really getting bad. And these are the things that are deterring people from wanting to start a family and have kids. At the most, people are like one and done, because $300,000 to raise a child, yeah, that's a lot. And like he was saying, and I didn't even look at it at that lens, like kids back in the early 1900s, 1800s, when they were born, they were raised to be the asset, to be the pension plan, because they would inherit the land, take over, and take care of you when you got older. And then they would have kids, and the cycle would repeat itself. But they've made everybody a goddamn bookworm and said that you just got to go and get you a degree. But how does that help the family? You know what I'm saying? Because when you do finally start to get a 6-figure paying job, you can't take care of your family with that. You know what I'm saying? Not unless you're going to go to the NBA. Like, it's not happening.
Boise, Idaho, a city people move to for affordability, is now at 6:1. The just move somewhere cheaper advice no longer works. The affordable places became unaffordable the moment people discovered them. So young people live in shoeboxes, 500 square foot condos, 1-bedroom apartments, studios with Murphy beds. You can raise a baby in a 1-bedroom apartment. People do it all over the world. Families in Hong Kong, in Tokyo, and Mumbai raise children in spaces that would make a Canadian claustrophobic. But in North America, we have built a culture and a legal system that makes it incredibly difficult. If you have 2 kids in a 1-bedroom, you're looked at with pity. Child services might get called.
Yeah.
If you rent, you're terrified of eviction. One landlord complaint and your family is on the street.
Yep.
Family-sized housing, 3 bedrooms, a backyard, a good school district, has become a luxury asset class reserved for the top 10% of earners or those who inherited from their parents. So couples wait. They wait until they can afford the second bedroom. They wait until they save the down payment. They wait until the market cools. But because house prices rise faster than savings, the asset trap we covered in previous videos, they wait forever. They wait until they are 33, then 36, then 39. And then biology takes over. Fertility declines, complications rise, the window closes. We have priced the nest out of reach of the birds, and birds do not lay eggs if they do not have a nest. Let me know in the comments. Are you delaying having kids because of housing costs? Or did you give up on the idea and go 3?
Well, speaking for myself, man, looking back on it, I low-key had no business having a child when I did. You know what I'm saying? Because I wasn't financially ready for that. You know what I'm saying? You're talking about a cat back when in his late 20s who was making all of what, $15 an hour and just got his first apartment. I had no business being a father yet. You know what I'm saying? And that kind of is the situation for a lot of people. People have kids before it's their time for real. You know what I mean? And I mean, you could say that even these individuals, like my great grandparents, were having kids before it was time. But the circumstances surrounding when they had those kids were a lot different than now. There's so much more that we're into. Back then, they wasn't doing all of the electronics and having a social life and going out and having cars and clothes and jewelry and all these different sneakers and stuff like that. It wasn't that. And like he said, you know, kids were an asset. You know, your kids had to work. Yet it was schooling, but they had to use their hands. You know, they had to work on the car with their father and stuff like that. The girls had to learn how to knit and stuff like that with their mothers. So it was passing of the torch. That's not going on now because most of us parents, we got to work. And then when we get off of work, we're so mentally exhausted and beaten from having to be at work that we just throw a tablet in the kid's face and tell them to go on their way. That's really what it is now.
The dual income trap. When 2 salaries became the minimum. In the 1960s, a family could survive, even thrive on a single income. This meant one parent, usually the mother, had the time asset available to raise children. Childcare was not an expense. It was built.
That is another goddamn problem. And I know I'm stopping the video a lot, but that's what we do over here. So that's one of my biggest gripes is that what you could afford on one income just maybe 40, 50 years ago, you need like 2 to 3 jobs or incomes just to afford that now. And it's not like these houses that were made in the 1900s are changing location, terrain, or anything like that. It's the same damn house. All you did was take your ass to Home Depot and get some plywood, some vinyl flooring, some cabinets that maybe cost you all of a couple of $1,000s. And now you want to mark the price up on this house an extra $200,000. Make it make sense. This is all just a way to keep people out, in my humblest opinion.
Into the household structure. Today, the economy is structured around the dual income household. To pay the mortgage in 2026, you need 2 salaries. This is not
And good luck with that, because at least in urban culture, just in social media culture, you know, if y'all know the 50-50 conversation, I ain't gonna get into all that right now, but good luck with that. You know what I'm saying? You really on your own with that.
a feminist victory. This is not women's liberation. This is an economic necessity disguised as social progress. Elizabeth Warren, before she was a senator, wrote about this in her book, The 2 Income Trap. Her research showed that when both parents must work just to pay for basics, housing, food, transportation, there is zero slack in the system. In the 1970s, if the primary earner lost their job, the other spouse could enter the workforce as a backup. There was a reserve. In 2026, both parents are already working. There is no reserve. One job loss means bankruptcy. Now add a child to this system. If you have a baby, one parent has to stop working, or you have to pay someone else to watch the child. If one parent
See, this is another thing too I want to talk about is that when I was born, me and my cousins in the late 80s, early 90s, and others would also agree with me, back in the day, there was always somebody home. Your great-grandmother, your grandmother, grandfather, your older siblings, cousins, sisters, brothers, there was always somebody in the damn house to watch the babies, to look after them. So there was none of this daycare stuff. Not saying that daycare didn't exist, but it was far less people using it back then because they didn't need to. Them days is over. You know, the grandmothers of today and the grandfathers of today still got to work, and then they want to be outside too having fun. You know what I mean? So I would say us millennials and Gen Z didn't get dealt the same deck of cards when it came to becoming parents. We just didn't get dealt those cards.
Parent stops working, household income drops by 40, 50%. In the modern economy, a 50% income drop means you lose the house. You cannot make the mortgage payment. You cannot pay the rent. So you keep working, both of you. Which brings us to the second option, paying someone else to raise your child. There, 4, the daycare mortgage.
Yo.
The 2,000 line item nobody warned you about. In Canada, the federal government promised 10-a-day childcare. It was supposed to be the solution. The great equalizer, the policy that would unleash fertility rates like Quebec supposedly did. But remember the basic economics we covered in previous videos? If you fix the price below the market rate, you create shortages. The wait lists for subsidized daycare in Canada are 2, 3, 4 years long. People sign up for daycare spots before they are pregnant. They sign up when they start trying to conceive. And they still do not get a spot in time. If you cannot get a subsidized spot, and most cannot, you pay market rate. In Toronto, full-time infant care costs $2,000 to $2,300 per month per child. In Vancouver, it is $1,800 to $2,200. In Calgary, it is $1,400 to $1,700. These are not typos. This is rent. This is a...
So you prioritize fictitious fiat notes over human civilization, over the continuation of the human species. You prioritize money, fake money, money that's made out of 25% cotton, 75% cotton, 25% linen. You've made that priority over life on Earth. You see, for all the smarts that humans have, they're stupid at the same time. You know what I mean?
car payment and a car insurance payment and a car maintenance budget combined. In the United States, there is no federal child care subsidy. The market is unrestrained. The average cost of infant care in the US is $1,230 per month nationally. But in cities where jobs exist, New York, Boston, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., costs exceed $2,500 per month. Let us do the math for a Canadian family with 2 children. Renter mortgage, $3,000 to $4,000 per month. Daycare for 2 kids, $3,500 to $4,500 per month. Total fixed costs, $6,500 to $8,500 per month.
Yo, low key, you basically gotta be rich to have kids. $4,500 for 2 kids in daycare, my nigga? Some people don't even make that a month. You talking about $4,500 for your kid to get watched? And that's if they get watched. You don't know what's going on when you take them there. They might be getting mistreated, like all types of stuff, and you paying $4,500 for that. Like, make any of this make sense?
After tax. To clear $8,000 per month after tax in Canada, a household needs to earn approximately $150,000 to $170,000 per year.
And where you finding a job paying that much money in this economy? Unless you are a neurosurgeon or some like that, you're not bringing that in. You're not.
That is before food, before student loans, before car payments, before saving a single penny. The median household income in Canada is $98,000. The math does not work. Childcare has become a second mortgage, and unlike a mortgage, you do not build equity. You just pay and pay and pay until the child turns 5 and enters public school. For many women, the calculation leads to a brutal realization. If I work, I earn $4,500 a month after tax. Daycare costs $2,200. Commuting costs $400. Work clothes, lunches, incidentals, another $300. I am working 40 hours a week to net $1,600. That is $10 an hour for the privilege of being exhausted. It feels pointless, but if she quits, she loses her career trajectory. She loses her seniority. She falls behind peers who did not have children. The gap never closes. This is the trap. You're punished if you work. Childcare eats your salary. You're punished if you do not work. You cannot afford housing.
They wait until us millennials and Gen Z become full-blown adults to pull this shit. Like, which y'all beef with us? You know what I'm saying? Like, why is it that things can't be, like, why can't we be adults with a 90s economy? You know what I'm saying? Like, let's just undo all this shit. Let's get rid of all of this techie stuff and just revert back to when we weren't using this and bring the jobs back. Everybody's going to have to go through the withdrawals and going back to a world where we didn't have all of this stuff so people can actually work and people go back outside and touch grass and go rent movies from Blockbuster. Let's go back to that.
So the rational economic actor chooses the third door. Do not have the child. 5. The motherhood penalty. How careers punish parents. We need to talk about the career cost of children because it is not just about daycare expenses, it is about trajectory. In our video on the changing labor market, we talked about how demanding the modern workplace has become. It requires constant connectivity. It rewards hustle. It promotes people who are available at 9 p.m. on a Sunday. Children are the enemy of hustle. Children.
And that's kind of like the dilemma that I'm kind of in because, you know, my son has special needs. And so for me, it's like I don't have that flexibility with my current employer where I could just be like, yo, I need y'all to give me a schedule that's more conducive to my situation because he has to get this, he has to get that. And they're just not that understanding. They don't care. It's like, well, you ain't the only person that's got a kid that needs. We got plenty of them and we don't do that for them. So what makes you any special than them? So these are the dilemmas that you deal with. And it kind of pushes you in this headspace where it's like, man, you know, man, I'm not having any more kids because I already know what type of time they on. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't, it's like, look, it's almost like with your job, it's like, that's your bad that you went out here and had a kid. You know, you're bad you decided to go out here and get a car note, that you decided to get a mortgage. You decided to, you know, pay all these subscriptions. That was your bad, but this is what we paying you and this is when we expect you to be at work. Like, we ain't making no exceptions for that. So choose wisely, nigga.
Get sick constantly, relentlessly, for years. They need to be picked up at 3 p.m. They do not care about your Zoom call with Tokyo. They do not understand quarterly earnings. They need you when they need you. In a hyper-competitive, winner-take-all labor market, the parent is at a structural disadvantage. Economists have documented what they call the motherhood penalty. Studies show that women's wages drop 4% per child on average. For women in professional careers, the penalty is higher, up to 10% per child, and the gap never fully closes. Men face a smaller penalty, but it exists. Fathers who take paternity leave or who leave early for school pickup are viewed as less committed. The workplace has been optimized for what sociologists call the ideal worker, a person with no external obligations, no family emergencies, no daycare pickups, a person who can work 60 hours a week and be grateful for the opportunity. If you have children, you are not the ideal worker. You are a liability. In 2026, where the only way to beat inflation is to get promoted, where staying in place means falling behind, taking a career break for children is financial suicide, we have built a system that selects against parents. And if the system selects against parents, the system will eventually run out of people. Quick poll. If you could afford it, would you have more kids? Or has the economy convinced
No.
you that children are not worth the cost?
No.
6. The dink lifestyle. Dual income. No kids, no future. So what happens to the people who opt out? They become dinks. Dual income, no kids. The internet celebrates them. Instagram is full of their content. Child-free travel, child-free brunch, child-free disposable income. If you remove the cost of a child, $300,000 from your lifetime balance sheet, suddenly you are rich. You can afford the nice apartment. You can afford the annual trip to Portugal. You can afford the $8 latte and the $200 yoga pants. This feeds into the doom spending phenomenon we see in millennials and Gen Z. They look at the future and perform the calculation. I cannot afford a house with a yard. I cannot afford a secure retirement. I definitely cannot afford a baby. The future is broken, so I will buy a Gucci bag. I will fly to Bali. I will enjoy the present because the future is not coming for me anyway. It is a retreat into what philosophers call soft nihilism. Enjoy now because later does not exist. The economy restructures to serve them. Look at your city. Look at what is being built. We are building thousands of one-bedroom condos. We are opening expensive restaurants. We are constructing dog parks and yoga studios and boutique fitness centers. We are not building schools. In Ontario, school boards are closing elementary schools because there are not enough children to fill them. We are not building 3-bedroom apartments.
Yo, this shit is deep, man. This is really deep when you think about it. That is really what's going on, especially out here in like Atlanta. Man, please. If you go down there to Midtown, that whole area, by the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, they putting up all these high-rise apartments, man. Nice, you know, 1 bedroom, state of the art apartments. You know what I'm saying? And like he said, this is who they're building it for. They're building it for these dinks, these people who have no kids. You know, they either in a relationship, they have no intentions on having any kids, and so they just wanna. This is who society is building for. The parents, the baby mamas, the baby daddies, and all of that. The people who decide to have kids, we are being phased out. You know what I'm saying?
Developers build one bedrooms because the profit margin is higher and the demand from dinks is guaranteed. We are not building family-sized homes. We are building luxury townhomes that cost 1.2 million. We are not building playgrounds. We are building fitness centers and co-working spaces. The construction industry has responded to the market. The market is childless adults with disposable income, so that is what gets built. We are redesigning our civilization for single adults who consume rather than families who create. The economy has optimized for the present. It has abandoned the future. And in doing so, we are optimizing for extinction. 7. The demographic Ponzi scheme. How Canada cheats the birth rate. So if nobody is having children, how does the economy grow? How do you maintain GDP? How do you fund pensions? How do you staff hospitals and build roads and keep the system running?
Yeah.
If you are Japan, you accept the decline, you shrink gracefully, you build robots and care for your elderly and watch your population fall from 125 million toward 100 million and eventually 75 million. If you are Canada, you cheat. You import the people. Canada has decided to replace natural growth, babies, with mechanical growth, immigration. In 2023, Canada added 1.2 million people through immigration. In 2024, the number was over 1 million again. The population grew faster than any G7 country. On paper, it was a triumph. But this creates a feedback loop that makes the underlying problem worse. When you bring in 1 million adults in a single year, they need housing now. Not in 20 years when a baby grows up. Now. They compete for the same scarce apartments. They bid on the same houses. They drive up rents. This makes the cost of living higher for the young Canadians already here. Higher costs mean they are less likely to afford children. Lower birth rates mean the government needs more immigrants to fill the gap. It is a demographic Ponzi scheme. You are cannibalizing the fertility of the domestic population to maintain the GDP growth of the state. And like all Ponzi schemes, it eventually collapses. Eventually, you run out of immigrants willing to come, or the immigrants realize they cannot afford children here either. Recent data from Statistics Canada shows that the fertility rate of immigrants drops to the Canadian average within 1 generation, sometimes faster. The low fertility virus is environmental. It infects everyone who lands in Toronto or Vancouver or Calgary. You cannot import your way out of a broken economy. You can only delay the reckoning. 8. The American parallel. Different trap, same outcome. Americans watching this might say, well, our taxes are lower, our houses are cheaper in Texas and Florida and Ohio. We do not have your socialist daycare waitlists. We are fine. You're not fine. The United States fertility rate is 1.62. It is also at a historic low. It is also below replacement. It is also falling. The mechanisms are different, but the outcome is identical.
Yeah.
Canada has crushing housing costs, but free healthcare. The United States has cheaper housing in some regions, but devastating healthcare and education costs. In the United States, the birth tax starts at the hospital. The average cost to deliver a baby in America with insurance is $2,854 out of pocket. Without insurance, it is $18,865. A C-section costs $26,280 on average. You have not even brought the baby home and you are already in debt. Then there is the lack of paid parental leave. The United States is the only developed country with 0 federally mandated paid maternity leave. 0 weeks. Companies offer what they want, which is usually nothing or the bare minimum. New mothers return to work at 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks postpartum. Bleeding, exhausted, still healing. Then there is the fear. School shootings. Medical bankruptcy from a sick child. The absence of any safety net, different pressure points, same result. The American middle class, like the Canadian middle class, has been squeezed to the point where reproduction is a financial error. 9. The dependency ratio. Why your pension depends on other people's babies. Why does this matter? Why should you care if your neighbor has children? Why is someone else's fertility your problem? Because of the dependency ratio. We covered this in our pensions video, but it bears repeating. The social safety net. Healthcare, pensions, old age security, nursing homes, the entire infrastructure that keeps elderly people alive and dignified relies on a constant supply of new workers to pay the taxes. When you retire, you're not living off money you saved. You are living off the labor of the current working generation. Their taxes fund your CPP check. Their labor runs the hospital. Their bodies drive the ambulance. The math requires a certain ratio of workers to retirees. Historically, that ratio was 6.1 or 7.1, 6 workers supporting 1 retiree. Comfortable, sustainable. The system was designed for that ratio. Today in Canada, it is approximately 3:1, 3 workers for every retiree. By 2030, it will be 2.5.1. By 2040, if current trends continue, it will be 2:1, 2 workers supporting 1 retiree, plus funding roads, schools, defense, healthcare, and all government operations. The implications are stark. Either taxes go up dramatically, crushing the workers who remain, or benefits get cut dramatically, crushing the retirees who were promised them, or both. There is no fourth option. The math does not allow for a fourth option. If the birth rate stays at 1.33, there will be no one to drive the ambulance in 20 years, no one to staff the nursing home, no one to buy your house when you want to downsize, no one to fund the pension you were promised. A society without children is a society with no future value. Asset prices, stocks, real estate, bonds are essentially bets on future growth. Future growth comes from future people. Future people come from births. If there are no future people, the value of your assets eventually approaches 0. This is the Japanification endgame, a slow, quiet fade into obsolescence, not with a bang, but with empty classrooms and shuttered maternity wards and a long, gray decline. Japan is 30 years ahead of us on this curve. They have already closed thousands of schools. They have already consolidated towns. They sell more adult diapers than baby diapers. Their real estate market has been flat for 3 decades because there are fewer people to buy the houses. That is Canada's future. That is America's future. That is the future we are building with every policy that makes children unaffordable. What do you think? Can governments actually fix this with subsidies and tax credits? Or is the economy
Maybe.
too broken for policy to repair? Drop your
Maybe.
answer in the comments. 10. The policy. Illusion. Why baby bonuses do not work. Governments see the fertility data. They know the numbers. They're not blind. So they try to fix it with policy, tax credits, baby bonuses, subsidized daycare, parental leave. Canada offers the Canada Child Benefit up to $7,437 per year for children under 6. That sounds generous until you realize daycare costs $24,000 per year. The CCB covers 31% of daycare. You are still underwater. Hungary has tried the most aggressive pronatal policies in the developed world. Tax exemptions for mothers of 4 or more children, subsidized housing loans, cash payments for births. The result? Hungary's fertility rate went from 1.23 in 2011 to 1.59 in 2021, an improvement, but still far below replacement. And the gains have already started to reverse. The lesson is clear. You cannot subsidize your way out of a structural economic failure. Baby bonuses do not fix the housing crisis. Tax credits do not create affordable 3-bedroom apartments.
But they will have people out here thinking that, or lead people to think that, you have kids, you get that tax money. Like, it's just a revolving door of the same thing. You're not really moving the needle or moving yourself forward. You're stuck in place and you don't even realize it.
Parental leave does not change workplace culture that punishes parents. The fertility collapse is not a policy problem. It is a civilization problem. It is the accumulated weight of 40 years of decisions. Financializing housing, stagnating wages, casualizing labor, eliminating pensions, lengthening education, delaying adulthood. You cannot fix 40 years with a tax credit. 11. The verdict. The empty cradle is a vote of no confidence. Let us return to that silent playground. It is quiet because the economy we built has no room for what happens there. We optimized for GDP growth. We optimized for corporate profits. We optimized for real estate valuations. We optimized for quarterly earnings reports. We forgot to optimize for life. We treated children as a consumer choice, like buying a boat or a vacation property, instead of recognizing them as the biological imperative for the survival of the species. We built cities where a bedroom costs more than a yearly salary. We built workplaces that punish anyone who cannot work 60 hours a week. We built a childcare system that costs as much as a mortgage. We built a healthcare system that bankrupts families for the crime of getting sick. And then we acted surprised when people stopped having children. The empty cradle is not a lifestyle choice. It is a verdict. It is the vote of no confidence that an entire generation is casting against its own future. They are looking at the deal, the housing costs, the stagnant wages, the climate projections, the student debt, the daycare wait lists, the career penalties, and they are saying, I will not bring a new person into this. The terms are unacceptable. You can print money. You can manipulate interest rates. You can import workers. But you cannot print a childhood. You cannot manufacture a family. You cannot legislate love into existence. The cradle is empty. And until we fix the economy that emptied it, it is going to stay that way. The solutions are known. They are not mysterious. Build housing, real housing, family-sized housing, not luxury condos. Pay people enough that one income can support a household. Make childcare a public good, like roads and schools, not a private luxury. Stop treating housing as an investment vehicle and start treating it as shelter. Stop optimizing every workplace for the childless hustle and start accommodating the reality that humans reproduce. We know what to do, we lack the will to do it, because every solution threatens someone's profits, someone's property values, someone's quarterly earnings. So we will continue to drift, continue to decline, continue to import people to mask the collapse while making the collapse worse. Until one day, we look around and realize there is no one left. So here's the question. Is the fertility collapse a temporary crisis that policy can fix? Or is it the permanent new reality of developed economies? Can we rebuild an economy where the middle class can afford to have children? Or have we passed the point of no return? Drop your prediction in the comments. If this breakdown hit home, smash that like button. Subscribe for economic truths nobody else will say out loud. Because demographic collapse does not announce itself with a crisis. It announces itself with silence, with empty playgrounds, with closed schools. And by the time you notice, it is already too late.
All right, y'all. So that's the end of the video, man. That actually really hit home for me because I didn't kind of look at it through that lens. I mean, I kind of was going to say that these are the main reasons why people aren't having kids like they used to, because kids, it costs too much. Just being an adult is expensive. You know, having to make sure you can feed yourself. You add a kid on top of that, like you asking for it. You know what I mean? And like he said, you know, they optimized profits and, you know, yachts and fast cars over the middle class that helped get them there, that paid for these goods that you made and these services so that you can be rich. You forgot about your middle class. You know, you said, oh, we're just going to replace them with AI. You know what I mean? And so you're going to get what you pay for, you know? Anyway, y'all get down in the comments. Y'all let me know what y'all thought about that video as far as like if you would, you know, have kids in this economy or if you're not. Y'all let me know. It's your boy Robbie. And until next time, we out.